got my driver's license, I did all of the stereotypical new driver things, like walking into school, purposefully jangling my keys so that people would know that I had driven to school. Or like loving the freedom that came with being able to drive so much that any trip, anywhere was exciting. When I first got my license, if someone in my family needed something random from the store, it meant I was running out the door excited to drive wherever was needed, no matter how boring. Some of you guys can relate to this, I'm sure, and if not, this is what you have to look forward to. One of the times I went out for something random, it was for my parents, they needed something from the grocery store, but I made a mistake. As a new driver, I forgot something important. My headlights. And it was nighttime. So there I was in my car, I was 16, I was scooted up as close as I possibly could be to the steering wheel because I needed to reach the pedal, I'm short, and so I'm sitting there, and I was trying to pull out of the local Food Lion parking lot. Probably, or I should say, definitely a little nervous. I mean, with the traffic and it being nighttime, when an older man pulled up next to me, waving, like really, really waving. And I was under a street lamp, for goodness sake, so I could see everything around me. I didn't know my headlights weren't on, and I didn't know why he was waving, and I thought, oh, how nice. He's friendly, so I wave back, I wave at him, but he keeps waving, frantically waving, and I think maybe he wants to leave the parking lot before me, so I stay put so he can go first. I wave him on, but no, he's still waving and doing every hand signal you can think of. He literally looked like a crazy person, and I could not understand what was going on. I didn't know what he was trying to communicate with me. So I put my window down to do more than just look at this man and his flailing arms, and I listened. I listened to him yell, "Turn your lights on, young lady." Oh, I was so embarrassed, and I did turn them on, though, and because of him, to this day, I don't go anywhere without triple checking if my lights are on, even on the sunniest days. I mean, most cars have an auto setting for headlights, but I don't even trust that now. I must be the one to turn them on. So, despite the concern that this man caused me at first, I was grateful for his help. I just had to take a minute to listen to what he was saying and understand. But that's the thing. That wasn't the first time I'd been told to turn my headlights on. I mean, my driving instructor, my mom, my dad, and anyone who had ever talked to me about driving, they had surely told me 100 times to turn my headlights on when I drive. I'd already been told to turn my lights on, and I had heard it, sure, but apparently not well enough to really remember it and apply it when it mattered. See, listening, really listening, and acting on it, it's so important. In fact, God even tells us it's important. The Bible says, "My dear brothers and sisters, pay attention to what I say." Everyone should be quick to listen. There's another Bible verse that says, "To answer before listening is foolish and shameful." So we get the gist. It says listen, so we listen. Got it. Okay. We can go home now. We can go home and listen, and we're good, right? No. Here's the thing. The Bible takes it a step further than this. See, the Bible has instructions like this on how to live, sure, but it doesn't stop there. It's not just a rule book. The Bible is full of different things that we can read about aside from direct instructions like we just read. It has songs and poetry, history, ancient laws, prophecies, and incredibly detailed stories of the lives that people have lived, people that we can learn from. one of these people being Jesus. If you have made a decision to follow Jesus, if you consider yourself a Christian, then you're supposed to be like Jesus. It's the whole point. You are a follower of Jesus. Christian is not just a title that you get, it's a way of life. And we can be more like Jesus by looking at the way that Jesus lived and applying it to our own lives. We can learn from what he said and did. So let's do that together now. Let's take a look at when Jesus demonstrated the instructions that we read earlier, to listen. Jesus and his disciples, they came to Jericho, and they were leaving the city. A large crowd was with them, and a blind man was sitting by the side of the road, begging. His name was Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus, he had heard that Jesus of Nazareth was passing by. So he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many people commanded him to stop. They told him to be quiet. But he shouted even louder. He said, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call for him." Jesus, surrounded by who knows how many people, stopped in his tracks because he heard Bartimaeus call him. He did not have to do that. Jesus was traveling. I'm sure it was busy. I can't imagine the amount of people in the crowd. And the crowd was there because they wanted to listen to Jesus. Jesus was not there to listen to them, yet he chose to. He chose to put everything else aside for a moment, and he chose to stop. He stopped and listened. And he invited Bartimaeus even closer. He said, "Call for him." So they called out to the blind man, "Cheer up, get up on your feet. Jesus is calling you." Bartimaeus, he threw his coat to one side, he jumped to his feet, and he came to Jesus. You can almost hear their surprise when you read this. The crowd really switched up from their initial commands, telling Bartimaeus to be quiet, and I think it's because they understood just how incredible it was that Jesus was stopping what he was doing to connect with him. I mean, Bartimaeus was excited. He jumped to his feet. He threw his coat. I bet he ran to Jesus. And when he reached him, Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "I want to be able to see." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." Right away, he could see, and he followed Jesus along the road. What an incredible story. Jesus worked a miracle in this man's life, and there is so much to unpack here. But first, let me say this. Jesus didn't have to. I mean, he didn't have to perform the miracle, much less stop what was happening to take the time to connect with Bartimaeus, to listen to him, to heal him. You guys, he's Jesus. He could have just looked across the crowd and been like, "Hey, you there, you're healed. Okay, back to my travels and my teachings and my busy Jesus schedule." And if Jesus had done that, it still would have been great, but he didn't. Jesus didn't do that because Jesus was showing us more than his incredible ability to heal. He was showing us that he cared so much about Bartimaeus that he did take the time to stop and listen to his cries. Jesus listened to the same person who everyone in the crowd had flat out ignored just moments before. Bartimaeus was a blind man begging on the side of the road who was ignored. In fact, not only ignored, but people had told him to be quiet. But Jesus didn't do that. He listened, and after he listened, and when he invited Bartimaeus over closer to him, you guys remember, he said, "What do you want me to do for you?" Don't you think Jesus already knew the answer to the question? He's Jesus. He knows everything. There's no way he didn't already know about this man's desperate desire to see. Jesus didn't have to ask what he wanted. but he did. He did because Jesus wanted to listen to what he had to say. Jesus listened to the man. He listened to him when he called out in the crowd. He listened to him when he said, "Teacher, I want to see." Jesus wants to listen to you and to me too. When we demonstrate faith by talking to him like Bartimaeus did, he is there inviting you closer, asking, "What else do you have to tell me? What do you need? How can I help you?" Isn't it a privilege to have a God who cares so much about us that he listens? You guys remember what I said earlier? That calling yourself a Christian means looking at the way that Jesus lived his life and applying it to your life. We should look at Jesus' actions in this story and do what he did, right? Makes sense? But we can't heal the blind. But we can listen. It really is important to listen to those around us with intention and care, just like Jesus did. Because you see, Jesus listening to Bartimaeus, it was arguably more transformative than the physical miracle that he did. When we really look closer at this, we realize that Jesus didn't just allow Bartimaeus to see, but he did it so everyone else around him could see Bartimaeus. The crowds that had previously ignored him, they saw him at that moment. For what could have very well been the first time in his entire life, Bartimaeus could see the world around him. But even better than that, for the first time in his life, the world around him, they finally saw him. That was just as much a miracle that day as the gift of his sight. And this is the kind of miracle that Jesus invites you and I to be a part of. All around us, at school, at home, at practice, at work, everywhere you go, there is someone nearby who feels like no one sees them. They feel like no one hears them or cares about what they have to say. For whatever reason, they've been pushed aside and left out, forgotten, just like Bartimaeus on the side of the road. But if you and I, if we take even a small moment to simply listen to them, to hear what they have to say, to let them speak and simply be seen, if we do that, then we may just find that something inside of them heals. We may not have the power on our own to heal someone's physical condition, but we can help heal their emotional ones if we stop and listen, really listen. But this type of listening takes intention, and that's way easier said than done. I mean, just listening in general, it is not something that we're very good at, is it? We're not good at it, are we? I mean, how often do we listen distractedly? We watch TV and scroll at the same time, or we'll have an in-person conversation but text at the same time. I mean, I know you've seen it because I have. The eye contact and nodding for an in-person conversation, but the fingers still texting for another conversation at the same time. That's not intentional listening like Jesus demonstrated for us, and we know it. I mean, I feel like we were set up for failure on this, though, when they started pairing Subway Surfer videos or slime videos or ASMR with a split screen and another unrelated topic happening on the other side. When we live in a world like this, the decision to follow Jesus' example of attentive listening is something that, well, we have to be attentive and intentional about. We have to actively remind ourselves to do it. And I'm sure that we'll need lots of chances to work on this, but what a better time to improve this skill and practice with all these chances than the series that we're in called On Repeat. We can improve this skill by listening on repeat, but we have to practice it. So next time someone's talking to you and your phone lights up, wait. Just wait to look at it. Just 1 minute, just wait. And keep listening to the person in front of you before you check it. You guys, you're going to have this decision to make in small group time in a minute, and you've had this decision to make just now in the last few minutes that we've had together. What did you decide? Have you looked at your phone while I've been up here? And if so, I'm not offended. I'm just asking, but if you did, don't tell your student coordinator. But just kidding, jokes aside, you don't have to feel bad about this. I know I certainly struggle with it too. You're not alone if you do struggle with it. But we all can be encouraged that we have the opportunity to change this. Really listening to the people around us is what it means to love like Jesus. To listen like Jesus is how we can make everyone feel like they're a part of this community. And if we do it this way, the way that Jesus did, you guys, the forgotten, the written off, the people around us that feel this way, they'll be seen and they'll be heard for the first time. Don't you want to be a part of that? You have the opportunity to be a part of this. You have the opportunity to listen on repeat, meaning you will have a lifetime of chances to listen. So start now.